Success begins where fear finally ends. Denzel Washington. Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you doesn't whisper to your mind. It speaks straight to your soul. Success, real success, doesn't start with talent, doesn't start with luck. It doesn't start with opportunity. Success begins where fear finally ends. See, every one of us walks around with this quiet tremble inside a shadow that follows us even when the sun is shining. It's not a monster. It's not some force out there in the world. It's the voice inside that says, what if I'm not enough? What if I try and fail? What if I fall flat on my face? Fear isn't loud. Fear is subtle. Fear is that gentle tug on your shirt, trying to pull you back into the familiar, the predictable, the safe. But I'll tell you something. Nothing great grows in safe soil. You can't plant your dreams in the dirt of comfort and expect them to rise like a mountain. Mountains don't grow in comfort. Mountains grow in pressure. I've learned that every meaningful step forward first feels like falling. Every breakthrough feels like a breakdown right before it opens. Have you ever noticed that? That right when you're about to cross a line you've never crossed, something inside gets loud? It says, don't do it. Stay where you are. This is enough. Why risk it? Let me tell you why. Because your life, your real life, the one you dream about when nobody's watching, is on the other side of that fear. Success is not a door someone else opens for you. It's a door fear guards, and courage holds the key. But here's the part people misunderstand about courage. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. Courage means walking with fear and moving anyway. See, I've met people who had opportunities you wouldn't believe, doors wide open, lights shining, all the space in the world to grow, and yet they stayed small. They folded. They turned around, not because they weren't capable, but because fear whispered one sentence they believed. You're not ready. Let me tell you something right now. You will never feel ready to become who you were born to be. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not even at the top. Greatness doesn't arrive wrapped in confidence. Greatness arrives disguised as doubt. But doubt isn't the enemy. Fear isn't even the enemy. The real enemy is the belief that fear is telling the truth. Fear lies. It always has. It always will. It presents the worst-case scenario, convincing you that it's the only scenario. It shows you failure as if it were guaranteed, and success as if it were impossible. But look back at your life. Think about every good thing, every moment of growth, every leap that changed your direction. Did any of it come without discomfort, without uncertainty? Without you stepping into something that made your stomach twist a little? Of course not, because life begins at the edge of your comfort. And success? Success begins even further, right at the end of your fear. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're standing in front of two paths. One is smooth, familiar, safe. You know every crack in the pavement, every turn, every shadow. This is the path fear wants you to walk because fear loves the known. Then there's the second path, rough, wild, unpredictable. You can't see what's around the bend. The trees cover the sky. The road disappears into the unknown. That second path, that's where your future is standing with open arms. Fear will always push you toward the first path, the path of comfort, routine, repetition. But your destiny, your purpose, your success is waiting on the second one. See, too many people try to negotiate with fear, talking to it like it's a friend. If I get more money, I'll feel secure. If I get more experience, I'll feel confident. If I wait until conditions are perfect, I'll move. Fear nods its head, smiles, and says, sure, later, not now. And later becomes never. So let me tell you this straight. You don't beat fear by waiting. You beat fear by moving. You don't need more time. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need every step mapped out. All you need is the courage to take one step. Because success doesn't happen in leaps. It happens in inches. 1 inch of courage. 1 inch of effort. 1 inch of belief. You take enough inches, you look back one day and realize you crossed a mountain you thought was impossible. It wasn't impossible. It was just on the other side of fear. Let me give you something to carry with you. Fear is loudest right before transformation, right before you grow, right before you rise. right before you become more than the version of yourself you've been holding on to. So when you feel fear growing louder, when your heart is beating faster, when your mind is trying to talk you out of your own destiny, that's not a sign to stop. That's a sign you're close. Closer than you've ever been. Now, hear me clearly. Success does not belong to the fearless. It belongs to the brave. And bravery is simply this: walking into the unknown with fear, still whispering, and choosing not to obey it. Now, let me take you a little deeper, because fear, it doesn't just stop you from moving. Fear shapes you. It shapes your posture, your voice, your decisions, your patience, your faith, and your ambition. It turns kings into prisoners and dreamers into spectators. Fear convinces you that the world is watching your every mistake. Fear convinces you that failing means you're finished. Fear convinces you that judgment is heavier than freedom. But here's the truth. Most people aren't thinking about you at all. They're worried about their own fears. So if you're living your life trying to avoid embarrassment, trying to avoid judgment, trying to avoid stepping outside the lines that other people drew, you're living inside a prison where the bars don't even exist. A prison built out of imagination. A prison built out of what if. But success, real success, isn't waiting inside that cage. No, success is out there in the open field, where you can be seen, where you can be vulnerable, where you can stumble and still stand up again. You see, the greatest trap fear sets is this idea that failure is fatal, that if you fall once, it defines you forever. But let me tell you something. I lived, something I learned, something I held on to when the world went quiet and the road got long. Failure only becomes fatal if you stop breathing into your own potential. Let me say that again. Failure only becomes fatal if you refuse to rise again. Think about a baby learning how to walk. They fall more than they stand. They wobble like a leaf in the wind. Their legs shake, their balance slips, and they end up face first on the floor. But do they stop? Do they say, well, guess walking isn't for me? Do they look at the adults and think, I'll never be as steady as them? No, they keep trying because they haven't learned fear yet. They haven't been taught to doubt themselves. They haven't been told that falling is a reason to quit. You were once that fearless. You were once that persistent. You were once that unstoppable. Life didn't take that from you. Fear did. Fear dressed up as caution. Fear dressed up as logic. Fear dressed up as being realistic. But the truth is, your spirit remembers who you were before the world told you who you should be. Your spirit remembers that courage used to be your natural state. Your heart remembers that risk used to be your playground. Your soul remembers that falling was part of learning, not a reason to retreat. But as we grow older, the world teaches us something dangerous. Don't fall. Don't fail. Don't look foolish. Play it safe. But safe doesn't make you successful. Safety makes you stagnant. You cannot protect your way into greatness. You can only live your way into it. Let me give you a story. There was a man who spent years building a boat. He carved it, shaped it, polished it. Every board was perfect. Every nail placed with care. This boat was strong, beautiful, and ready to sail. But you know what he did? He never placed it on the water. He walked around it. He admired it. He protected it. But he never tested it against the waves. And slowly, that boat became a coffin for his dreams, because he was so afraid of sinking that he never allowed himself to sail. Some of you listening right now, you've spent years building your boat. Your skills, your ideas, your gifts, your preparation. You polished it, perfected it, rehearsed it, protected it, but you haven't launched it. You haven't put it in the water. You haven't let the world see what you can do. Why? Because fear whispered, what if it sinks? But my question to you is this: what if it sails? What if that boat carries you to a life bigger than you ever imagined? What if that risk reshapes your destiny? What if that step into the unknown is the moment everything changes? Listen to me. You cannot reach your future by clinging to your past. You cannot grow into your greatness while protecting your comfort. You cannot become the person you were meant to be while hiding the person you are right now. Fear hides you. Courage reveals you. And until you reveal yourself, your real self, your deep self, the self you keep tucked away, success will stay out of reach, because success isn't just about what you achieve. Success is about who you become on the journey to achieving it. You want to know why fear feels so powerful? Because fear knows exactly who you could become. Fear sees your potential long before you do. Fear understands that once you stop listening to it, it loses control over your life. That's why fear presses down harder the closer you get to your breakthrough. That's why fear becomes louder right when you're about to try something new. That's why fear fills your head with doubt right when you're about to rise. Fear is trying to protect itself, not you. Fear is trying to survive. But you weren't born to protect fear. You were born to outgrow it. So if you're sitting there waiting for fear to disappear before you move, you're going to be waiting a long, long time. Fear doesn't leave first. Movement does. You move, and fear shrinks. You act, and fear weakens. You show up, and fear steps back. Courage is not a feeling. Courage is a decision to stop letting fear narrate your life, a decision to stop giving fear the final say, a decision to stop living small when your destiny is calling you to live big. Because, hear me, success begins where fear finally ends, and fear ends the moment you stop feeding it with your obedience. Now let's keep walking, because there's more you need to understand. Now listen, because this is where most people misunderstand fear. Fear doesn't live in the world. Fear lives in you. It's not in the circumstance, not at risk, not in the challenge, not in the opportunity. Fear lives in the meaning you give those things. Fear grows in the space between what is happening and what you imagine might happen. And that space, that gap, is where most people build their whole identity. They build their self-worth inside the worst-case scenario. They build their confidence around what could go wrong. They build their decisions around the possibility of pain instead of the promise of purpose. But hear me clearly, fear is imagination turned against you, and success is imagination turned toward your destiny. You don't need a new life. You need a new meaning, because nothing changes until you stop letting fear define what things mean. Let me show you what I mean. Some people see a closed door and think, maybe it's locked. Others see a closed door and think, maybe it's mine to open. Some people feel butterflies in their stomach and say, I'm nervous. Others say, I'm ready. Some people see competition and feel threatened. Others see the same competition and feel sharpened. Some people fail once and think, this is proof I can't do it. Others fail once and think, this is proof I'm getting closer. It's the same moment, but a completely different meaning. Your life is nothing more than the meaning you choose to give to what happens to you. And if fear is choosing those meanings for you, it's shaping a life you never asked for. Let me go deeper. Have you ever seen a lion pacing inside a cage? It wasn't born to be there. It wasn't designed to be there. Every muscle in its body is built for hunting, running, and leading. But the cage becomes familiar, predictable, safe. Do you know what breaks my heart? Some people live their whole lives like that lion. They wake up in a cage of routine. They pace back and forth inside a cage of doubt. They roar inside a cage of fear. Not because the cage is locked, but because the cage is comfortable, and comfort is the most dangerous prison you'll ever live in. Not because it hurts you, but because it keeps you from discovering how powerful you really are. Let me give you a truth that can change your life today. Fear doesn't stop you from being capable. Fear stops you from realizing you already are. You're strong. You're talented. You're equipped. You're prepared. You're built with more potential than you've ever used. But fear hides your strength under self-doubt. Fear hides your clarity under confusion. Fear hides your passion under hesitation. Fear doesn't destroy who you are. It just buries it under layers of maybe. Later, not yet. I don't know. But the moment you start peeling those layers back, the moment you say, enough, let me step out of this cage, you begin to see something breathtaking. You were never afraid of the world. You were afraid of meeting the version of yourself that fear kept hidden. A stronger you, a braver you, a wiser you, a more capable, more alive, more awakened you. Success isn't just about reaching goals. Success is about awakening the parts of yourself that fear kept asleep. Now, let me ask you something real, something simple, something powerful. What would you do tomorrow if fear had no voice in your life? What move would you make? What dream would you start? What conversation would you have? What risk would you take? What version of yourself would you finally become? Sit with that question. Feel it. Let it stir you a little. Because the answer you just imagined, that answer is your calling. That answer is your truth. That answer is the life fear that is trying to keep you from. But here's the good news. Fear can only stop you as long as you let it speak. And the moment you decide to stop listening, fear loses its grip. Let me give you something practical, something simple, something you can use every single day. Fear grows in silence. Fear grows in avoidance. Fear grows in the shadows. So bring it into the light. When fear shows up saying, "You can't do that," answer it. Say, "Watch me." When fear says, "You're not ready," answer it. Say, "Neither is anyone else." When fear says, "What if you fail?" answer it. Say, "What if I succeed?" You're not arguing with fear. You're retraining your mind. You're rebuilding your identity. You're teaching yourself to choose courage over comfort. Because courage isn't loud. Courage isn't dramatic. Courage isn't a movie moment. Courage is a daily decision, a quiet declaration, a simple choice to move forward, even if your knees shake. Now let me tell you something essential, something you must carry with you. Fear ends the moment you trust yourself more than the voice trying to stop you. Success doesn't ask for a perfect version of you. Success asks for a courageous version of you. And courage, real courage, begins in that sacred moment when you finally say, "I'm done living scared." That moment, right there, is the beginning of everything. The beginning of your rise, the beginning of your power, the beginning of your transformation, the beginning of your success. Because success, your success, begins exactly where your fear ends. And we're not done yet. There's one more truth waiting for you. Let's walk into it. Now hear me, because this is where everything comes together. This is where fear falls. And the real you steps forward. Success isn't something you chase. Success is something you grow into. And to grow into it, you have to shed the parts of yourself that were built on fear instead of truth. Fear builds walls. Courage builds doors. And every major turning point in your life, every breakthrough, every moment of clarity comes down to one simple question. Are you willing to walk through the door, not peek through it, not hesitate in front of it, not wait until someone else pushes you through it? I mean, will you walk through on your own 2 feet? Let me tell you something I've seen again and again. When people talk about wanting success, they're really talking about wanting freedom. Freedom from doubt. Freedom from struggle. Freedom from the weight they've been carrying for years. But freedom has a price. And the price is the death of fear. You can't hold on to both because one suffocates the other. Fear doesn't coexist with greatness. Fear doesn't coexist with purpose. Fear doesn't coexist with a life that's lived wide open. Have you ever tried to breathe deeply while holding your breath at the same time? You can't. And you can't live fully while holding on to fear either. Let me ask you something real. How many times have you talked yourself out of a blessing? How many times have you walked away from an opportunity because the unknown felt heavier than the possibility? How many times have you let fear decide your future while your potential sat there waiting, untouched? More times than you can count, right? And I want you to forgive yourself for that. Not because it wasn't a mistake, but because you didn't know another way. You didn't know how much fear was costing you. You didn't know that every time you let fear win, you were teaching your mind to settle, shrink, stay small. But that version of you, the one fear convinced you to become, does not have to be the one you stay. You can choose differently. Right here, right now, let me tell you a truth that changed my life. Fear is loudest right before you become someone new, right before growth, right before expansion, right before your spirit rises into a version of yourself that your old self never imagined possible. Fear senses when you're close. That's why it tries so hard to scare you back into the familiar. Fear knows that once you take that step, you won't come back. You won't fit back into who you were. You won't shrink back into old patterns. You won't hide in old cages. You won't settle for old limitations. Fear knows it's losing you. And that is the moment you take your life back. You see, fear doesn't disappear when you succeed. Fear disappears when you decide to stop giving it authority. Let me talk to you like family for a second. I know you've been carrying fear for a long time. I know you've been carrying doubt, hesitation, caution, and insecurity. I know there's a part of you that still worries about being judged, questioned, misunderstood, and rejected. But hear me clearly. You don't owe fear your loyalty. You don't owe fear your future. You don't owe fear to your potential. You don't owe fear for your life. You owe yourself a chance. You owe your purpose a chance. You owe your future a chance. Fear has had its turn. Now it's yours. Let me give you one last story. One I want you to hold on to. There's a story about a man standing at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a canyon. The wind was wild, the drop was deep, and the fear in his chest was heavy. But on the other side of that canyon was everything he ever wanted. His dream, his purpose, his calling. He looked down at his feet and said, "I can't jump this far. No one can." And he was right. If jumping was the only option. But as he stood there, afraid, overwhelmed, frozen, an eagle landed beside him. And the eagle didn't jump. The eagle didn't dive. The eagle didn't calculate the distance. The eagle opened its wings and let the wind carry it. And in that moment, the man understood something he had forgotten. He was never meant to jump. He was meant to rise. Just like you, you're not meant to leap blindly into the unknown. You're meant to rise into it. You're meant to grow into it. You're meant to expand into it with a courage that lifts you higher than fear ever could. Your wings are not broken. Your spirit is not weak. Your potential is not gone. You just forgot you had wings in the first place. Success isn't the jump. Success is the rise. And you rise the moment fear loses its power over you. So let me leave you with this. A truth you can feel in your bones. Success begins where fear finally ends. And fear ends the moment you choose to fly. Open your wings. Trust the wind. Rise. Your life, your real life, is waiting on the other side.